Hello classes, this is Mrs. Crawford. This video is going to be going over the first day of the Polynomials unit. It's on adding and subtracting, so kind of just the basic stuff. Really should be review of what you've already learned with a little bit of new vocab. A couple things to write down first of all. The degree of a polynomial is the degree of a monomial with the highest degree. And I really kind of hate that definition because you are describing degree with the word degree. So really what they're saying here is the degree is the highest exponent in the problem. Highest exponent. So for example, if I have 3x to the fourth minus 2x to the third plus x squared plus 7, the highest exponent in the whole problem is 4. So this would be a fourth degree polynomial. That's what that degree means. Coefficients, you guys have learned that one. That's the number multiplied by a variable. So 3 is a coefficient, negative 2 is a coefficient. There's really a 1 right here. So 1 is a coefficient. 7 is not a coefficient. That's actually what we call a constant. Constant means the number that doesn't have a variable attached to it. So a couple coefficients in there. Monomial means one term. Binomial means two terms. Trinomial, three terms. Polynomial, many terms. So if we look at this equation, or sorry, expression that we wrote up here, this is one term, the 7. 1x squared is 2 terms. 2x to the third is 3 terms. And 3x to the fourth is the fourth. So this is actually a polynomial because it's more than 3 terms. Each of those things are one term each, like one piece of it. Alright, and then we've got kind of some new stuff here. This is what we call function notation. And it is the output. So that's what you get when you put something into this side. So that would make this the input. And this f of x here tends to kind of confuse people. Really, you can kind of think of it as y equals 3x minus 5, if that helps you. And f of x is really just kind of a name for the function. It's called f of x because it's the function of x. It's whatever I do and I get x there. If I look at this, 3 is my coefficient, kind of using those words we were just talking about. I'm just going to abbreviate it. And because there's two things here, 3x and 5, this is a binomial. And the degree, even though we don't see an actual exponent here, this is really a 1. So it's a first degree binomial. That's how we would name this equation. Alright, so the first one we have here, you're adding, so you have two different groups in parentheses. Because you're adding, you really don't need the parentheses. Really, this is like a plus 1 there. But what's positive 1 times anything? Well, it's not going to change it. Positive 1 times 10 is still 10. Positive 1 times negative 2 is still negative 2. So what tends to throw people off in this section is that we're doing combining like terms because it's adding and subtracting. You're no longer just doing multiplying where you put everything together. So if I look at this guy, 6x squared, I can only combine that with things that are like terms. In other words, things that have the same exponent attached to them. So in this case, that would be the negative 4x squared because they both have x squared. So I'm going to underline that one. Now, when you put them together, because we're adding and subtracting, we're not multiplying and dividing, you're just combining how many of them there are. So there's 6x squareds here, and there's negative 4x squareds here. Well, what's 6 and negative 4 put together? It's 2, and you keep the same exponent, so it's still 2x squared. Notice it's not x to the fourth. Next, we've got negative 7x. What has an x attached to it? That'd be the positive 9x. What's negative 7 plus 9? It's also positive 2. And again, it's just x, no x squared or anything like that. Just combine the coefficients. And then last we have our constants. So that's 8 and negative 5. Well, those put together make positive 3. Now look at your equation. Are any of those like terms? No, we've got an x squared, an x, and then just a regular number. None of those are like terms, so I can't add them together. So this is my final answer. Okay, go ahead and try this one, which is right next to it. I'm going to put the answer there in just a minute. But you should pause and try it on your own. All right, answer to this one. Only like terms are negative 6 and positive 1. That makes negative 5. I'm going to put that at the end. 3x squared and negative x are not like terms, so you just write them out separate. Notice I did it in order. Highest exponent, next exponent, regular number at the end. All right, now this one that we're going to do next is a little different. You'll notice it's got what we call function notation, just like we talked about. So I'm actually going to rewrite f of x plus g of x. And really all function notation is just substituting stuff in. So in other words, if they want me to find f of x plus g of x, I need to replace f of x and I need to replace g of x. Well, it tells me right here that f of x is 3x minus 4. So I'm putting some parentheses around. 3x minus 4. Plus sign has to go in the middle. It tells me that g of x is equal to x minus 2. So I'm going to do that. And now it actually looks just like the problems we were doing over here. I just had to get it to that point. So now I can start doing like terms. Well, I've got 3x, and then this is really a 1x right there. Well, what's 3x plus 1x? 4x. And then we've got negative 4, negative 2. Put those together, we get negative 6. Again, 4x and negative 6 cannot be combined because it's all adding and subtracting. So we got to keep that separate for our final answer. Okay, again, go ahead and do the now you try. See how you do with that. Pause right here, try it yourself, and then I'll give you the answer. All right, so first of all, let's rewrite this guy. So I want g of t plus h of t. And let's replace that. G of t is 3t plus 5. I'll put little curly keys on my t's so you can tell the other t's. Plus sign goes in the middle. And then we've got t cubed minus 4t. All right. So let's start combining like terms. 3t, is there anything that has just a t connected to it? That would be this one. 3t minus 4t is negative 1t. Notice I'm putting it in the middle of the problem because it's probably going to end up being the middle term. And then I've got 5 and t cubed left over. Those don't have the same exponent, so they have to be written separately. T cubed is the highest one, so that's going to go in the front, and then just tack on the plus 5 at the end. And that should be my answer. All right, now notice with these next examples we're going to look at, we've got subtraction signs in the middle here. Now, the only thing that's going to change with this is the fact that this really means negative 1. Now, if you think back to when we first did our adding problems here, I said that this is a positive 1, and that positive 1 times anything is still just the same thing. Well, the problem here is that negative 1 times something is not itself. 10 times negative 1 is negative 10. 100 times negative 1 is negative 100. Negative 5 times negative 1 is positive 5. So every time I multiply something by a negative, it changes the signs. And really, because this -1, this -1 times all this, it really has to be distributed. So it's -1 times 2x squared. It's -1 times positive 3x. And it's -1 times -1. So all of these signs are going to end up changing, but notice it's not being multiplied by this group, so they are not going to change. So that's the only thing that's different with subtracting. So I'm going to rewrite 4x squared minus 5x plus 6, keeping it exactly the same as I had before. And then all of these signs change. So 2x squared becomes negative 2x squared. Positive 3x becomes negative 3x. And -1 becomes positive 1. Notice nothing else changed, but all three of their signs switched. It doesn't mean that they're all negative. In fact, notice this last one became positive, and it just changes the signs. Now we're back to like what we were before. Now I can start combining like terms. So 4x squared, what else has an x squared attached to it? That'd be negative 2x squared. Well, 4x squared minus 2x squared is 2x squared. Negative 5x can combine with negative 3x. Well, negative 5 and negative 3 make negative 8x together. And then we have plus 6 and plus 1. So that makes plus 7 at the end. Notice I'm writing it in descending order. Biggest exponent, next exponent, and then no exponent at the end. All right, go ahead and try the one right here. I'll give you the answer to it in just a minute, but make sure to pause and try it on your own. All right, hopefully you tried it yourself. Remember, the first group doesn't change. And then we have negative x squared, negative 2x, and negative 5. They all change because they were all positive. Okay, negative 1x squared combines with negative 1x squared. Well, what's negative 1 and negative 1? Negative 2x squared, not 0. It doesn't cancel out. Negative 3x and negative 2x make negative 5x. And then the plus 4 and minus 5 make negative 1 there. And there's my final. All right, the last example that we're going to get to for today is the same exact thing. It's just you have to do function notation first, but it's still subtracting. So g of n minus h of n. G of n, it tells me, is 3n minus 2. So I'm just going to replace that. There's a big subtraction sign in the middle. And then h of n is n cubed plus 2n. Again, there's really a minus 1 here in front, so I got to distribute that to everything in the second group. Notice everything in the first group stays the same, 3n minus 2. Now I've got negative n cubed. Positive 2n becomes negative 2n. Please make sure you're distributing that negative to each member of the second group. Okay, now I can combine like terms. 3n combines with negative 2n to make 1n. And negative 2 and negative n cubed do not combine, so I just have to write them in order like this. And then there's my answer. Pause here, try this one. And I'm just going to write out the answer. Hopefully you tried it yourself. So notice I'm starting by just putting everything together. First group stays the same. Second group becomes negative t squared plus 2t. Only thing I can combine is 2t and 2t, which is 4t. Negative t squared goes in front. Negative 3 goes in the back. And that's your notes for that day.